Hello again. My name is Steve Zimmerman, and I practice Buddhism. When I was a young guy, I thought Buddhist. I'm not even sure when I heard the term first. But my early recollections of a Buddhist was some guy that wore a robe and shaved his head and lived in the mountains and sat in a lotus position all day long and didn't do much except contemplate something. But I'll start back even before that. I was raised in a not a super religious family, but a religious family. I was brought up as a Lutheran. My father referred to us as non-union Catholics. Okay. I was an acolyte, which was the guy that lit the candles, put the candles out, handed out the bowls, did all that. I thought for a while it was going to be my lifelong career because my parents volunteered me to do it all the time. I can remember my mother dropping me off still in her nightgown and going back home, but I had to go to church. Sometimes both services. I went through catechism, I think 7th, 8th, and 9th grade once a week. Pretty contemporary minister at the time. This was in the early mid-60s, so we had a lot going on. A war, civil rights, a lot of changes in the country. We used to have campouts, we had dances, we had a lot of things that happened. The church was pretty contemporary, modern. The church was pretty supportive of community things. I grew up in Frederick, Maryland, back when Frederick was a small farming community. We did have electricity, but it was a small farming community. Soon after my catechism, my parents started having marital issues, and so we didn't go to church as much, and I didn't volunteer to be. I was getting too old to be an acolyte. You start shaving, you couldn't be an acolyte anymore. But at that time, I started with the whole hippie thing because it just seemed like something that I don't know what I believed in at the time, but they were about fairness, they were about peace, they were about not going to war. They also liked to smoke pot. So that sounded like a lot of fun to me. But I guess at the time, was a guy that was still searching for something, I don't know what, but a sense of belonging, a sense of being fair, feeling like I was grounded someplace. And the hippies that I hung out with, and I guess I was one of them, in Frederick, we even had our own little Haight-Ashbury area in the park, and we threw frisbees and talked and did this. And there was a group of us that actually almost had like a reading club, if you can imagine. The books that we were into were The Hobbit, right? Siddhartha, Herman Hesse, right? And Thoreau. We were the intellectual hippies. But the book that Thoreau, I still like Thoreau. As a matter of fact, my T-shirt underneath has a saying of Thoreau on it. But Siddhartha fascinated me, the story. If you haven't read it, you want an introduction to Buddhism, read it because it's basically the life of Siddhartha Gautama, which was the Buddha's name. And so, I don't know, I sort of put that in the reservoirs of my mind. And soon after my hippie experience, I had a very low draft number. It was 81. Mr. Nixon sent me a letter that said my services were absolutely needed for security of the country, and I got drafted. I was very lucky. I did not go to Vietnam. I stayed in the States. I'm from Frederick, Maryland. They sent me to Aberdeen Proving Grounds. I guarded the Susquehanna River against communist invasion for 2 years, and I was very successful. Anyway, I got out of the Army, went to college, didn't know really what I wanted to do, sort of studied horticulture and animal science. It's a whole other thing, but anyway, eventually got back into Frederick, started a landscape business, for a few years. 1984 happened, and when it did, it was a big recession. Don't know anybody's in here old enough to remember that, but anyway, it happened, and it destroyed my business at the time because I was doing a lot of work for guys that were building houses, and it came to a complete halt. Anyway, this and that. I met a wonderful woman from up this way. We married, we moved up here, started having some babies, and I thought, by all this time I was out of the church. I wasn't really following any practice, but I wasn't really settled either. I mean, we thought we should get back into the church because we both came up in a Christian church, and we thought we need to have these babies baptized or something because, and so we started having them baptized. The first two were, the third one we'd already grown out of that. But anyway, searching. Somehow I got back into the Buddhism. I'm not sure why or how, but I just started reading. And I discovered this guy, Thich Nhat Hanh. And he's probably done as much, if not more, in the Western world to spread Buddhism as the Dalai Lama. And he's a Vietnam. He's passed. He died. Thich Nhat Hanh died a few years ago. In Vietnam. He's from Vietnam. He was thrown out of Vietnam because of the war, because Thich Nhat Hanh did something that's called engaged Buddhism. It's where you just don't wear a robe and sit around and contemplate. It's where you get out and do things. You become part of the community. You live the Buddhist life in the world. You don't just think about it and practice it in a safe place. The communists didn't like that. So Thich Nhat Hanh was thrown out, and he lived in exile for many years in France. He actually started a monastery there. He visited the United States about every other year for quite a while, has two monasteries, one in New York and one in California. And his engaged Buddhism really spread. He wrote, 80 books, maybe. And you can listen to him. It takes a little while to get used to the accent, but if you listen for about 10 minutes, it starts to just all of a sudden assimilate, and you can really start to follow him. I never got to see him in person. I have several friends that did, and I believe them when they talk about it, that there's a different energy in the room with this guy. He's like a level of calmness and mindfulness and peace that energy sort of spreads. And I kind of believe that, I think. I know I do. But I started getting in and started reading. When I was a hippie, we used to meditate, but we used to smoke pot when we did it. So I don't think it really had the same effect. You know what I mean? It's like, So doing it without any kind of substance makes a big difference. Wow, go figure. Anyway, Buddhism. When did it start? The Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, was born about 6 centuries before Christ. Buddhism is about 2,600 years old. He was born in northern India, and he was a prince. His family was wealthy. He lived a billionaire type life. I was going to say something stupid, but anyway, his parents and family tried to prevent him, as legend says, from seeing any of the bad things of life, such as disease, death, any of these things. But on some excursions from his palace, he saw things. He saw poverty. He saw suffering. He saw death. He saw disease. And these things bothered him. At 16 years old, he was married. And by the time he was 29, he was having his first child. And on the day of the birth of that child, legend says that Siddhartha Gautama left the palace to never return and went basically into the wilderness, so to speak, and started to practice all sorts of religions of the day. Ascetics mostly, Brahmins. He even got into almost a self-abuse where to find spiritual enlightenment, you starve or you eat barely anything, a few grains of rice. He did this for almost 6 years, and he says to himself, this isn't working. I'm starving, I'm self-abusing, I don't feel enlightened. I'm not finding what I need to find. And so under a Bodhi tree, B-O-H-I, Bodhi tree, he sat and meditated and contemplated. And so after so many days or hours, he sort of awakened. And he said, and he had actually several followers that were around him when he was doing this. He awakened and he shared with them that he felt that he had been enlightened, absolutely enlightened. And what he discovered was something pretty simple, I guess, I think. Simple to say, difficult to do. But Buddhism is based on Siddhartha Gautama, or the Buddha, and Buddha just means enlightened. And the Buddha says we are all Buddhas. We all have the ability to become enlightened. And that the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering. There is a cause for the suffering. There's something we can do about the suffering, and it's the Eightfold Path. Wow, that's it. I'm enlightened. It's pretty difficult, though. I think that most everybody in this room today would agree that we probably all suffer. Lately, we all may be suffering more than we were before. And it goes up and down, but we all suffer. Life is about suffering, and how do we deal with it? Well, the Eightfold Path, and I can't tell you that I remember all of them, but it goes like this. It's about the right view, the right thinking, the right mindfulness, the right speech, the right action, the right diligence, the right concentration, and the right livelihood. And when you start thinking about that, that's a pretty big order. That's a massive order. Thich Nhat Hanh, mindfulness is actually down on the list, but he puts it as number 3. And if you want to read a book that's really good and very simple about Buddhism, it's The Heart of the Buddha by Thich Nhat Hanh. Okay? Buddhism is like even many Western religions. If you delve into it, it can get complicated and complicated and complicated because there are basically 2 schools, and those schools are even divided. But the one thing I can say about Buddhism is they've never started a war with another religion. And that really is something to say, because the others, Hindu, Muslims, Christians, they're kind of known to be violent. The whole violence in the Old Testament is phenomenal. It's scary, actually, but anyway. But mindfulness is something that really, really has impacted my life. I'm married. I got 3 kids. I have a business. I have employees. I have a wife. I have a granddaughter. I have a mother. And I have siblings. For me, just taking 1 or 2 of those, not the whole thing, can be stressful. So what is mindfulness for me? What is it? It's about becoming back to now. It's about the present moment. In the book, he breaks it down into all kinds of phases. But it's about just staying in the now, because I am a human being that not only has committees in my head, I have subcommittees in my head. And mindfulness, when I practice it, and that's the whole thing, practicing, you practice meditation, you're never going to get it perfect. You just have to keep practicing. And your meditation today will not help you tomorrow. Your meditation this morning may not help you this afternoon. So meditation can be something too. You can do it at a red light. The guy behind you will blow if you're too long sitting there, but you can do it anywhere. Matter of fact, I travel around a lot all day long. There's been days it's been so stressful, I find a back road, a couple places I know, I can pull off and sit in my truck for 10 minutes and just breathe. And I can recite things in my head, or I can just breathe. The thing too, I was early on thinking that meditation was all about entering a new level of consciousness and to go to a different realm. And it probably was when I smoked weed with it, but it's not now. It's about coming just back to me. It's about not shutting my brain down, but as those committees and subcommittees go through my head, mindfulness can allow me to stay in the moment and let them pass, because feelings are constantly coming in and out of my head. And it's important for me as a human being to feel somewhat centered and grounded. And the other thing is pause. Emotions, I don't want to react to them, okay? Except if it's a smile or a hug. But the other emotions that are negative, I don't want to react to. So mindfulness and meditation allows me to have a pause to where even if it's 3 or 4 seconds, I may not say something I regret or do something that I don't want to do. It's very, very important in my life to be this way, especially with some of the craziness that goes on in the world that we have no control over. You know, and the great thing about it, in the mornings, I spend time reading and meditating, and I can leave my house, and my business is at my house, and I can walk outside and I can feel like I'm just gliding on water. And my employees come in, and within 30 seconds, I want to commit homicide. You know? But I remember, I just meditated. I'm supposed to be walking on water, right? So it's life. It's life. Some of the news today is pretty outrageous of craziness and chaos, and let's clean house with a hand grenade. And so that to me is very disturbing. So it's really important. And sometimes it's what the great thing about meditation and mindfulness is it's free, it's inexpensive. You don't need anything special. You can do it in a chair. I do it in a chair. I also have a meditation pillow. And it's just getting in touch with yourself, really. It's getting in touch with you. It's getting in touch with you. A couple things about Buddhism, and then I'll say a little bit about Buddhism and the environment. Buddhism is about the fact that we're all interconnected. Everything is interconnected. There's nothing that can stand alone. It's also all about compassion, and it's all about non-harming. One of the things that I read earlier was about do no harm. I try to recite that to myself all the time. Do no harm to anything, any living thing. Not that I intentionally set out to do it, but there's so many things that we don't realize that may harm something else. It's the old thing of throwing the pebble into the large lake. Spreads out. What impact am I going to have on anything in my life? So the other thing that got me really into the Buddhist thing, Buddha is not a god. He's not the son of anybody except his parents. And he doesn't claim there's a God. As a matter of fact, when asked about God, he just sort of deferred to others. He never got into God. So there is no Godhead in Buddhism. Thich Nhat Hanh points out a lot that you can be any religion. You can practice any religion of the world and practice Buddhism, because Buddhism, even though it's listed in the top 4 in the world, is not really a religion. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. And you can practice it any way you want. If it's just simple meditation, if you want to go to some 4 degrees about no harm, you can carry that on. You can even become ordained. You can actually go and live in a monastery if you like and shave your head and wear a robe. Not got that far yet. Matter of fact, for a few of you that know me, up till 2 weeks ago, I had a ponytail, and I hadn't been in a barbershop in 35 years. My wife trimmed it A couple of weeks ago, I decided to take it off, and it's gone. See, anyway, my granddaughter doesn't like my haircut. She liked my ponytail, but she's getting used to it. The world we have, another tick not on, about the environment. There's 5 mindfulness trainings if you really dabble into all this stuff, and there's 3 of them that really pertain to the environment. The first mindfulness training is aware of the suffering caused by destruction of life. I am committed to cultivating compassion and learning ways to protect the lives of animals, people, plants, and minerals. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world, in my thinking and in my way of life. That's a tall order. And if you look at the 8-fold path, is there anything in there that you may be doing? The last one is like livelihood. It can be in this complex country that we have. Sometimes you may be doing something that looks pretty innocent, but the end result might be somewhere in the military-industrial complex. It might be somewhere where it's a pesticide or herbicide. Is it killing things that it shouldn't kill? Sometimes we don't know, but it's... The second mindfulness training is aware of suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression. And committed to cultivating loving kindness and learning ways to work for the well-being of people, animals, plants, and minerals. And when you list at animals, plants, and minerals, and people, he sort of covers the whole thing. There's not anything we can mention that doesn't belong in something like that. I will practice generosity by sharing my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in real need. I am determined not to steal, not to possess anything that should belong to others. I will respect the property of others, but I will prevent others from profiting from human suffering, the suffering of other species on Earth. Pretty tall orders. And then the 5th one, the aware of suffering caused by unmindful consumption. I am committed to cultivating good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, my society, by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I will ingest only items that preserve peace, well-being, and joy in my body, in my consciousness, and in the collective body of consciousness of my family and society. I am determined not to use alcohol or any other intoxicant, or ingest foods or other items that contain toxins, such as certain TV shows, magazines, books, films, and conversation. I'm aware that to damage my body or my consciousness with these poisons is a betrayal of my ancestors, my parents, my society, and future generations will work to transform violence, fear, anger, and confusion in myself and in society by practicing a diet for myself and for society. I understand that a proper diet is critical for self-transformation and for the transformation of society. Pretty heavy things this guy talks about. Tall orders. What I really like is its practice. Okay, it's practice. I am a vegetarian. I have been for about 15 years, I guess. You would think this is a meat belly, but it's not. I don't smoke, I don't drink, and I don't smoke pot anymore. I haven't for many, many, many years, actually, any of that stuff. My business, we practice a holistic approach to landscaping. I don't use any insecticides or pesticides. The weed killer we use is a 30% commercial vinegar solution that we buy, 55-gallon drums. Does a good job, beats the hell out of Roundup. We talk about insanity of the world. You know, Bayer owns Roundup now. So they not only make the product that cures the cancer or works on the cancer that Roundup causes, but they have the causative agent too. I had to throw that in there. So what a world, what a world. When it comes to the tech thing, there's a book that I want to recommend. It's called Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. And the book is called Last Child in the Woods. I recommend highly reading it. It's not about Buddhism, it's about our kids. It's about our kids' lack of touch with nature and what's happened. The guy that wrote this book is basically, he's a writer, journalist. He's gotten all kinds of information from around the world. I have as a business owner, I segue here a little bit, and I've been up here, this is our 33rd year up here. The change in employees, the change with the phone, the introduction of the phone. You know, in the beginning, you had no phone. You know, we had no phone for a long time. Then you had a flip phone that worked as a walkie-talkie, and that was real nice. And then all of a sudden, it got into the iPhones, you know, Apple. So everybody's got a phone now. And they're always on it. I don't care what kind of policy you have. The government's saying, I think it's up to 48 minutes a day outside of lunch and breaks, people are on their phones when they should be working. So productivity has got to be off. We have a policy against it. You almost have to be with the people constantly. But it just seems like now it's okay to be on the phone all the time. Watching my granddaughter, who has access to a play phone, and she knows how to open my phone, because she likes to listen to music on it, but she knows, I think, more about it than I do. It's scary. It's scary to see young people that get so overstimulated with these phones that I don't really know. I see employees that I think are just, they can't focus. It's a very scary thing because this overstimulation, I think, has a real impact. It has a real impact on us. I think if we admit to ourselves as adults that if we watch the news too long or we get involved too much in our phone, we want to commit homicide, that we can really be affected by it. So just imagine these young minds. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not standing up here to profess it. For me, the answer is more meditation. I'm not sure if the Buddhist said it or Thich Nhat Hanh, but somebody said, if you meditate for 10 minutes a day and it's not helping, then do it for 20. And I think that's right. It's a practice. It's cheap, simple. And the biggest problem is just to relax enough to let all the insanity bypass, because the anger, the news bites. Now just through the microphone. The news bites and everything else are going to arise. You're going to worry about this. You're going to worry about that. You're going to think about this. With me, it's about the employees. It's about what's up for the day. It's about my granddaughter. It's about my kids. I got 3 great kids. Well, no, I got 2 great kids, and I got one that's very dysfunctional. I tell people 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And they're all raised in the same household. He took a different path, and his path is not the one we would have chosen for him, but it's where he's at. I can't do anything about it except meditate and be there if he needs something, but I stay out of his life because sometimes he's in that position where doesn't matter what I say, it's wrong. And if I say something and then the next day it didn't work out, then that's wrong too. So, and he lives in Colorado. It's a good place for him because it's legal out there to smoke pot all day long. But anyway, if you haven't looked into Buddhism, just out of intellectual curiosity, check it out. It's an interesting lifestyle. You don't have to, do whatever. You don't have to give up meat. You don't have to quit smoking or drinking if you don't want to. They're good life choices anyway. But for me, it has helped keep me grounded. It has given me pause. I find a joy in it because the thing that it really has done is made me realize that the true happiness and contentment, and I'm not talking about, I'm just talking about this feeling, just calmness inside, comes from inside. It does not come from everything we chase. And that's one of the other things that Buddha, it's about detachment from a lot of worldly possessions. I should not put, it's not about the house or the home or anything. It's about really the inside. It's about my relationship with myself, my relationship with others. And the other thing about Buddhism that's kind of interesting is it ever changing. You know, the only constant in our life is change. And Buddhism really expresses that. Because in Buddhism, they have a concept about no self, because the self constantly changes. So how do you define it? You could have been defined when you came through the door. You can have another definition when you leave the door, because an hour plus has passed. So with that, I guess I can shut up, I hope. But I told you learned something about Buddhism. And thank you for your time. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about Buddha.